So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to be carrying on our CYBERPHONK stream today. What I'll do quickly is I will play what progress we've made so far, and then we'll carry on from where we left off, essentially. As you can see via our timeline here, we are making pretty good progress, I would say. Through this region here, we're now moving on to the next section of the shot. So here, you can see we're kind of just over halfway, kind of like reaching into the 2/3 kind of area. And I will just play what we've, like I say, what we've made so far. So let me just quickly turn off the music and then we can go from. So yeah, this is what we made last time. So we did that section, we did the robot animation in the bottom right corner here. And then as we start to come down and swing, it's this part through here onwards. We started to do blocking +4, and I was pretty happy with how that turned out. It's one of those things where you never quite understand what it's going to look like until it happens. So yeah, it's working pretty well. We were coming through and we got to this point here as we're pushing off. Now I can actually see that I already have a weird hand contact, which I need to fix, which I believe is probably because it's in FK. Yeah, it is. So I just need to adjust her shoulder here so that it's not going through the floor. This would have been a quite rudimentary pose, if you will. So we need to start tying some of this stuff down. You see there's some weird blending happening as well on the screen left hand too. So I need to make sure I just fix that stuff. It may be a case that we switch to IK through this part just for this contact to make that clean. I could do it in FK because it's only a short period of time that the transition happens over. Literally like a couple of frames. So maybe I could just do this by eye because it might not actually be worth going through the whole pain of fixing it by doing lots of switches. Now I can see that she is holding on to the sign here, so I just need to make sure I keep that contact as she comes through. Which I already think is working pretty well. It might just be a case of through this transition, I would like to see a bit more of a crossover with the arm. So maybe we can ever so slightly slow this down, just a slight amount. So if I were to delay this by 1 frame, and then I want to make sure that we have a nice contact on the hand here, because that's reaching through as well. So they're grabbing the ledges. And then just to get this swing, because right now, if I look at this screen, her left arm, it's quite nice that it's dragging, but then it crosses over and just kind of like vanishes through this part. So my intention would be to give us a little bit more time through this transition here. So maybe it's ever so slightly slower so that I can create a couple more keys in here just to have us help through that transition. So as we're coming through, I could ease this out. And then go up a little higher, keep the legs where they were. So we get a bit more of a push off as well, which is nice. So I can make sure they're both pushing off the ground. I'm wondering if I want to... Yeah, I think I still need to keep this on 1s just to get that arm to come through. So we get a little bit more of an arc in here still as we're tracking. And then this is where the right arm is going to come around. Then this arm is coming through. Now it's reaching this point here. You can always have the hands, the fingers drag a little bit more. Let me just open Studio Library again. So we're going to drag the hands here. Maybe something like this. And I can pose to that angle a bit more. Just get that. So now we're coming through, and then we have this point of contact. Now I just need to make sure I'm also tracking the feet through this push off. So we may have to slightly hyperextend the foot as that comes around so we get that nice fluidity. That works pretty well. Then we have the contact. Now, it feels a bit strange for this frame not to be on ones as we come through here. So I'm going to continue to ease this in. Just so then we can get a bit more of the lead coming through on the arms. And then we can drag the wrists back. Maybe we can have a bit more of like the hands spreading out. And then I'm going to ease out the legs here so that they hold in the straight for a bit longer. Like that. I may actually tuck the legs in a little bit more here. Come through. So then we want to get the hand poses. So I want to spread her hands, which I have this spread here. Let me do the same to the other hand. Now it looks like we're getting some weird splining happening on some of the keys. It looks like some of these aren't all being keyed as we come through, so I'm just making sure that's keyed locked down. And then again, let's get some nice hands dragging poses here. As that comes through. Then we're reaching the spread through here, which is feeling better. There we go. Nice. So we got the push off, we got the dive, we have the reach, contact, and then we're coming through. Now I'm gonna still continue to go a little bit down here, and then we're pushing up. So through this, I want to see if I can get a bit more weight into her shoulders rather than compensating too much with changing her spine. Or like bending her arms too much. I may be able to get a little bend in there, but I want to avoid it if possible. And I want to tuck her hips in. And then we also want to tuck her knees in. I'm going to preserve clarity, so I'm really going to tuck those legs under as we're coming through. It's because we're getting so much angle change on the camera as well. What I'm trying to avoid is where we're going to end up, if I do screen space match in this area, for example, what may end up happening is that she goes through the sign. So I want to try and avoid that if I can. So we're coming through. It's feeling pretty good. So we're tucking under, coming around. And then as we come into this part, I may try and go on twos. So we can go in twos in this part. So I'm going to add an in-between through here. Now, it looks like we actually do have...
Every generation
I've got another ad. So we have this moment in here where as we're coming through, see how we were leading through with her right arm here and we're dragging behind with the left. Then we're coming around, the right arm her left arm follows through. They make contact together, but then the way I've blocked this right now is we then have the opposite. So the left arm is continuing to follow through, the right arm stays behind, which actually I think does work well. So I can just continue to have that arm drag back a little. And then with this arm, we're following through. It's going to have a little bit more of a drag through here. And then with her legs, I want to almost keep them tucked in for longer. So we preserve those shapes. Try and keep the clarity in as much as we can. Feels like I need to look at her bend bones through there, see if there's any value. Yeah, there is a little bit. Because it feels like, oh, it made it worse. I'm trying to keep that nice straight going through her arm. Again, it's just because she has the skinning on her clothing. It's not helping. I want to see if I can get a nice push-off hand pose here. Is that going to work? Is there a better one? I think I prefer the other one. And then I can just slightly extend the fingers back a bit. Something like this. And then similar thing, want to make sure you pose the other hand too. So coming through. So that's working pretty well. We will go into screen space in a moment, but I want to... Well, maybe we can turn that on. So let me just go into our outliner. And it should be... I'll find the right connection. Where are you? Animated extras? No. There's too much stuff. Here we go. Follow cam. So in here, major... Right, here we go. Attach cam. So as we're coming through all of this, it's still off. This is good. This is good. Here. So I'm going to key this, and on this frame, we want to stay on. Ah, I can't because I need to run the script again. Okay. That's good to know. So for now, I won't use screen space matching. We're coming through and we're pushing away. I may actually need to keep this on ones just for the contact until we fully release. So I'm going to create another in between. And then in here, I'm going to keep that arm contacting and pushing off. And then this one also needs to peel back. So we're getting a bit of variation on the hands as they push away. So a similar thing, I want to extend the arms, the hands back slightly here. Then it's coming through. Then we're back on 2s, which is correct. And then here we're still coming through on 2s, which is good. So we had the 4. So now we're coming around. Again, I can just blend between these. Getting a bit of strange gimbling again. And then I want to lead with that leg a little bit more. So punching through, getting that nice extreme in there. It may need to arc over slightly more to then come through. I think that's working well. Similar thing with this arm, just keep it nice and straight as that's tracking this arc. Just tracking everything on the arms. Maybe that can straighten out. And then I want to get a very clear read on this arm is going to be reaching out to grab the sign. So we're coming through. And then I want to reach this hand out. So again, this is her left hand. There we go. It's a much clearer read. As we're coming through. Hey, we have a really, very detailed and thorough question here regarding workflow. So it says, I'm working on 2s, and when I'm working on my shots, I'm fusing all 3 workflows. Okay. So basically, I set my 2 main poses, then I go straight ahead between them. But first, I describe the arcs and the spacing, but only using the cog. Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes I end up with too many poses, and my animation starts to lose its contrast, and being too slow, and begins to look too slow. How do I stop myself from over animating my shots? Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's something to be said about going straight ahead, because when you go straight ahead, there's maybe slightly less planning involved, unless you already have a very clear intention of how you're going to create your breakdowns. Whereas within my own workflow, I try to create the breakdown first and define where that timing happens, and then you can ease in and out of that breakdown. So I kind of use this structure here. So this is the main structure I use, and like when I say I use, everyone uses this. It's just theory. But say you have your 2 key poses, right? Which you're saying you create your 2 main keys, which are on either end. And then in between, you're just essentially doing your straight aheads, and that's defining your spacing and your arcs, etc. This is one method you can use, but the only issue with this method is you have to be really controlled in your spacing, first of all. So if you're saying in your case that it's feeling too loose or begins to look too slow, it could be that the overall action that you've created is either taking too long. If your rhythm is still working the way you intend it to, then you need to tighten your spacing. So I would say that you need to basically look at what spacing you've got, and in this case, say you can see it's progressing out and we've got frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can see within those 5 frames we have quite a large breakdown here, but we could tighten this even more, right? Like we could spend a lot more time favoring our previous pose and then have a much broader contrast in the middle, and then you spend a much more time on the other side favoring the other key. So essentially just tightening and favoring towards your key poses will give you essentially a less loose feeling that you're describing. And then when you say it begins to lose its contrast, that's again probably due to spacing. But the main thing that I take away from the way that I treat the workflow using twos is that, again, if you have this structure where within your breakdown, if you are describing a lot of lead and follow, so, you know, we saw that in the example we're doing here. So in this case, as we're coming through, if there's a very clear lead of these arms reaching out first here, then this is creating the contrast. And then as we come behind, that's when the legs follow through later here. So again, we're kind of holding the poses, and then you've got this very contrasted spacing in between. So that's maybe something that could potentially could solve your issues that you might be having. But personally, I prefer to work more pose to pose than straight ahead. I just spend a little bit more time using Tween Machine to help guide me through my establishing my spacing when I'm creating those poses to then ease in and out of. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I'm happy to elaborate on it further if you need more explanation. Yeah, I'm curious though, when you say you're fusing 3 workflows, so when you say the 3, it sounds like from what you've written at least that you've described 1, because I mean you've got straight ahead, but straight ahead is I guess is a technique, but then you're saying you're creating two poses. So if you're creating your 2 poses and then you're working in between, you can still go straight ahead between those. That's not necessarily pose to pose, that is straight ahead. So I'd call that one workflow. So yeah, it'd be good if you could elaborate a bit more on what these other 2 workflows are. So we're coming through, and now we have this contact here. Now, at some point, I was contemplating this earlier as to whether I want to go in FK or IK during this transition. It looks like I am in FK right now. I know I just moved it, but I was translating. So yeah, as we come through, I do have that contact, and then we're dropping down, then passing through. So it feels like she kind of drops into this. And there was part of me that feels like this could just have a little bit more kinetic energy. So it's more in the follow through. So I think up to this point, this works. But there's something about the way the legs come through here. It feels like it just slows down maybe a little too much on the legs. I like that the whole body slows down, but I almost want the legs to follow through a little bit more so we get a bit more depth that we get to play with before we reach this pose. So, but this is great. And then this is great. But somewhere in between this, I feel like I want to rework it a little bit. But we'll get there first. So, as we're reaching through, this is on 6. So I need to create 2 keys between this, but it might actually be that this ends up being on a 4. It really does depend on the inertia. I will try to do it as I've timed it currently. And I can always check in the graph editor as well to see my forward and back. I just want to, or in this case, more left to right. But I want to just see the spacing I have so I'm not losing momentum. So in here, I still want to keep the left arm straight as we're coming through. Now, I could make contact with the foot first. I mean, it's longer, so there is some inevitability there as to it's going to reach first. I'm going to hold the leg out. I don't really want them to contact at the same time. So I guess that leg would just reach out further. Kicks, straightens out. And then I like seeing the green here, so I'm deliberately keeping that shape just to read, again, for clarity purposes, even though it doesn't make sense perspective-wise. And then I'm going to keep the other arm still back. So we're holding this pose. Again, keeping the silhouettes clean. Do I do something? Yeah, I think I'm going to keep it more like this angle. I can always tuck this leg in a little bit more. I'll keep her head aiming at the sign. And then we're going to make contact. So this is one of our impact frames. So in here, it'd be nice to feel that impact as she bumps into it slightly. So again, like to keep her a little bit more like, I guess, a little bit more rough around the edges kind of thing. So as she comes in here, it'd be nice to just feel like she doesn't care about, like she's not clinical and like very controlled in everything she does. There's like a little bit of like, she's not, she doesn't mind kind of getting like hit, like thrown around a little bit more. So as she's coming through, again, I want to track my hand in screen space as well. Just be careful of that. Keeping that hand straight. Oh, did I just lose a pose? No, just not everything was keyed. There we go. So as we're coming through, I'm going to keep this leg straight still. So this one here, you can see it still hasn't made contact yet. So that actually works in our favor a little bit. So through here on ones, that's going to work for us. So we're coming around. Still going to keep her coming through. This arm is easing out still. I'm going to feel that contrast a little bit more. Get a little bit more flow through the arms through that part. And it feels like I like this pose, but it feels like it's lacking the impact. It's going to take away from the impacts that we were just referring to. So we really want to feel the follow through as we're coming around this part. Feels like that neck also needs to stay a little further forward for longer. So coming through. That's working. So we're coming through. Now, right now, this feels pretty controlled through this part. So this is where I want to start to go on ones, because I want to feel that the bump kind of feeling as she like hits into the wall. So the idea here is that she's going to grab into it. Now, again, we don't actually have the final model of this sign, because what I want it to do is I want it to kind of crack down the middle, and you're going to see all like the inner wiring actually crunches down it. So that's going to be like a bit of set dressing later. But I just want to make sure that as she's going through this, that it is a very clear line that she goes through. So what I might do before we go any further is I'm just going to open this up in perspective so that I can create the path, like just some geometry just to guide me through it, so that I'm not going off track. Like, I do want to get a little bit of jitteriness, but I want to make it feel like it's a very clear path that she's dropping down. So as we come through this, I'm just going to create some mesh for us to guide us. So if I were to do a plane, just put it in the scene. Then let's rotate it. Then just drag this down. So if this is her contact point, I'm just going to put this here. I can delete it later if I need to. Thank you for the follow. So as she comes down this, I just want to actually see what happens. Oh, that was suffers. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, yeah, I think if you are going straight ahead, there's one thing that you may end up finding is that you're always trying to create, you're tracking arcs and spacing and movement, right? So sometimes what it takes to kind of preserve that contrast, especially when you're going through straight ahead, is not everything kind of has to continue easing in and out progressively, but instead don't be too afraid to kind of hold the pose and like let it rest for a bit longer, and then when you do want it to move into its specific accent, that's when you come out a bit faster, essentially. Like you see a very deliberate spacing, and then it tightens out on the other side. So if anything, in some degree, it's actually less work because you're not having to track your arc as perfectly through each and every given frame to get that nice clean spacing and arcs, because with the contrast comes favoring your poses, right? You're spending much more time holding in something before it moves, so then during those transitions you're spending less frames having to track those arcs. So in some sense, maybe what you're doing is actually you're making it harder for yourself by having to try and constantly layer everything up and like tracking perfect clean spacing through long transitions, whereas you could just hold the poses, and then when you do have the accent come through, then you just get that very deliberate spacing. So what I can do is I'm just going to create a very basic layer here and then turn this on. I'll just call this temp path, temp sign path. And then now I have this guide just to see what the arm is doing. Let me save this again. So as we're coming through, you can see. So we're not actually going down a clear path here. So I do want to make sure that this is pretty clean. So what I can do is if I just select the mesh again, let me just move this over. If this is where I want it to be for this pose, because this pose is where we're settling, it matters more than reaching where we are at the top. So as we're coming through, I just need to make sure that as we reach this contact, maybe the whole pose needs to be a little bit more to the right. Which right now it seems as though everything's in FK anyway. So if I were to move all this stuff, see how the whole pose moves together? So that actually works in my favor. So if I go in the graph editor again, this is our forward and this is our left and right. So if I just go in here, you can see we have this progressive spacing that's reaching this final pose. So what I need to do is I just need to find where that pose is, which is here, through this part. So if I just select these keys and then up to maybe this transition here, I'm just going to have these all ease in pretty tight. Now, hopefully it doesn't mean that we lose too much, but there you can see when we get to this point, we're closer to that line as we come through. So I can slightly just repose that hand now to at least make contact with the line. So as we're reaching through here, I'd like to get a bit more contrast. So I'm going to twist the chest to reach out. I may get a little bit of stretch in here. Again, if you were doing this properly, you would do this in IK, but I'm kind of cheating it for now. So I want to get this nice grab frame. You get a big contrast in here. Need to open up Studio Library again. So this is her left hand. This is going to be in the grab pose. Now her right arm is still going to continue to drag. In here. So I might be able to blend through this if I need to as well. Keep her legs contacting the floor. Now, on this frame, this is where, again, I may need to do a little bit of tracking to camera. I think that's working. We'll have to play it back. But I do need to blend in the shoulder, the twist of the chest, because the hands aren't in IK. Sorry, in world space. So you see how that twist in here? This needs to be blended in a bit. I'm just going to, by selecting those three together, I can still start to create a little bit of spacing as we come through to hit this reaching point without having to change the space switching. So again, there's a little bit of like compensating for FK by doing it that way, but it works. It gets what we need. So I'm going to keep this leg here tucked in because we still haven't felt the follow through come yet. And then here is where the impact is going to come through. So what I actually may do is keep the knee tucked in for a moment. I may want to delay the arm as well. I'm going to play with it, but through this section it's going to be a little bit on ones, I think. So I know we've already referenced this specific moment earlier in the sequence where she slides down the wall. But I was going back to that same piece of reference material because there was something I really liked in the Attack on Titan Levi escape scene. And I wanted to see how they approached it because in my mind I remembered that it had a lot of texture as she like slides down the rooftop. And the sequence that we did earlier was a little bit more deliberate with that, but I want this to feel very aggressive. So what I've done is I've gone back to that, which I'll frame through with you in a moment, and you'll see what I mean as to what I want this to feel like as we go through this next step. So before I do that, let me just fix this arm because I can see it's actually going up a little too high. So let me just reset our translations here. So as we make contact here, we may actually get a bit of bend in the hand. There we go, so now it's grabbing on. And what I'm referring to is this sequence here. So as we're coming through this... Sorry, I just need to go back a bit. Here. So if we watch how Levi goes down this roof tile, So he's running. We got a lot of texture. Now I want to see how he slides. So he comes through. You can see there's a lot of camera shake as well, so we can always look into adding a little bit of that maybe later. There's not really an explosion per se behind Major in our case, but there is a lot of sparks flying, so we could add a little bit of grit in there maybe. But what I want to look at is as he comes down, look at the tracking of his knees and his arms. So as he comes through, see how you get this instant down and then back up. And then his arm is starting to follow through behind, but then look what happens. See how it was going, his elbow was going down to the left, but then it instantly recoils to the right. So he's kind of doing that kind of action. And you can also see how the knee on his right knee kind of pops to the right as well. And then it pops back down again. So you're getting these like jitters where there's a lot of texture from all the like, as he's going down, there's a lot of like residual energy dropping through his body. You can see here again, if you look at the arm, see how it goes to the left, then hits back to the right, and hits back to the left again, just in the frame. So it's like super snappy, and that's something I want to feel like with this. It may not be crazy, in as crazy as what we saw there, but I would like to feel some texture in there. So I feel like we still want to actually have a bit more twist in her chest still. We haven't quite reached the impact just yet. So we're coming through. I actually want to hit into this harder, into this frame. So this is going to be, again, apparently the main theme of this stream is going to be contrast. So we're coming through. I want to really feel the impact. So we're going to hit. I don't know yet if I want to keep this leg up, but I do quite like the idea of it, just because it's going to feel like there's a lot more impact again. Because all these things are going to be bumping into the sign. May want to get a little bit more connection in her hips. Need to counter this stuff. Again, in an ideal world, I wouldn't counter a lot of this stuff, but just for like, again, I feel like I can just track it manually. And it's not the smartest way to animate, but it's something I feel like I can like work with. So I'm keeping her arm dragging here. So I really want to feel the impact as she hits down into this. So as we're coming through, again, this is on ones in here. So this is already hitting with quite a lot of impact. So then as we hit down, again, this feels quite controlled here. So this pose may end up being slightly delayed. And for whatever reason, it looks like this arm should be dragging back when it's not right now, which is strange. Ah, I know what's happened. So when I was trying to clean up my scene a while back, I recall we simplified the keys using Animate, which basically meant that any key that didn't have any change to it, it deleted. So it was removing some keys through here, but it's fine, we can fix that. So we're coming through. Now this pose here is fun, but maybe we can delay it, you know? So what I mean by that is we keep the same pose as before, but we're still going down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything but the root. We're going to favor it to the previous pose. And then, yeah, that already works pretty well. So we're going to spend a little bit more time impacting and falling out of it. And then we're going to hit this and then drop down again. Maybe be able to do it later, you know. I'm experimenting here, but what I'm going to do, again is I'm going to hold that pose. So this is something that's going to happen a bit later on. So these poses in here, we're going to be reworking, I think, quite a bit. So we're coming down. So this is a ever so slight reblock because we're changing the timing, which means more is going to happen in between. So as we're coming through here, we're hitting this impact. Now I want to have a frame in here as we're dropping, where I need to think about how she continues to fall. So I need to go back into perspective view. So I'm going to rework some of this. So we still want to have the nice straight in the spine. I may actually have it slightly arched back in her spine. Just so we get a bit more contrast. We can always try stretching the arm out a little. Now this arm is actually going to be hitting through. We're also going to, which means we may get a bit more twist in her chest. So this is coming through. This arm is impacting. Got to think about the pose itself as well, so it's going to take some tweaking. Basically, I'm getting the idea of the follow through first, and then afterwards I'll go back in, I'll like reconstruct the pose to make it read and look more appealing. But I want to just get a feel for what's actually going to follow through and hit, etc. So we really want to tuck this arm in. Do I have it just go straight against the sign? Or do I have it come through? Yeah, I think I'm going to have it tuck in. Because there's also some like crazy foreshortening happening. So it's going to make some weird deformations. Let's just have that hand in a more fist position. So her right hand needs to be fist. Now the legs deliberately are going to hit out. So this leg, which was straight, is going to continue being straight. Probably going to dangle back a bit for longer. And this leg is going to stretch out too. So again, this is where we were playing with the idea of depth again. As she comes through and she's grinding down, so you can see the slight scale difference. So I can play with like this foot being larger, which I think is one of these controls. Yeah, this one. And then I can take these controls here. I can also scale these, just give us a little bit more depth. And likewise, I can do the opposite to the other one. So this foot can be a little bit smaller. We're just cheating with scaling to give the sense of depth. And then let's take the foot roll off. Foot. Got to find what control it is, this one. So she comes through. It would be nice to get a little bit more of a stretch as well in the spine. So I'm just countering back. This is already looking a little bit more interesting now as we come through. It does mean that I've stretched these legs out a bit too far, but I can figure that, just repose that out. She drops. Then I want to get a nice stretch on the arm. I am actually going to cheat a little bit here. So let's stretch that shoulder because I want to see the straight. And also if I look at this line going through the body, it'd be nice to continue that straight. So I'm gonna just gonna do some pretty crazy translations in here. Because again, even though I'm translating this super long, you don't see it in camera, do you? Because we're looking under. This is why it's really important to make sure we read in camera view to get those poses working. Bring a little bit of bend in the arm. So let's just make sure we key that and save it. And then whether we do go into this pose, maybe we don't, you know? Like I like the idea that she is just free falling and this thing is like grinding down. I have a feeling we probably may not even end up in the pose that we blocked. Again, it's one of those things where you experiment, you get a feel for like the overall action, and in many cases you end up actually reworking it anyway. And this is, if you were on a production, this is one of those things where you'd have to then like re-pitch it to like your director, being like, so I tried what I had before, here's what we had, but actually I've made this alt where I think it's better for XYZ reasons. Just make that hand a little smaller too. It's a bit too big for my liking. May mean that this hand needs to be slightly smaller. Just getting a bit of depth perception in here. More ads again. So we're coming through, we're dropping down. Now I can start to create a little bit more of this recoiling in here. So right now, timing wise, this has got some quite long frames in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little awkward timing wise. So I'm wondering if I were to shift it 1 frame earlier, it gives us a little bit more impact. So now I can actually work on 2s again, and then I can break it down to 1s after that. So as we're coming through, this is where we need to feel that contrast. So I need to make sure she's like really straight up against the sign to feel the impact. And then I want to make sure that she's got this nice big stretch as she feels the weight drop through. We're going to get quite a lot of twist in here, so she's going to bump against the wall. You can see that we're already getting some pretty weird translations and rotations and stuff. But we can fix that. So grabbing, sliding down. Now this arm, I do want it to kind of, we could almost have it tail back. Now this is interesting. Do I have it come under and then hit down? I could have it more direct. So instead of coming over like this, it's more slightly coming over. Yeah, I think this works a little better. Go away adverts. So coming through, we're hitting quite impactfully into this. And then I want to keep the hand a bit more straight and like spread out. Somewhere, and it may need to blend between these. Yeah, something like this. This has come a long way since you last looked at it. Yeah, hopefully you're liking the progress we've made. But yeah, we're getting there. Slowly but surely. You guys have no idea for how I want this to look when it's finished. I mean, you do, because you've seen the work in progress dev stuff, but in my mind, how I want it to look when it's finished. Hopefully it's beyond what people's expectations are. Am I splining this, or is it going to be in steps? It's a mix. So there's some parts in 1, some parts in 2, some parts in 3s. I think maybe there's a couple of 4s here and there. But that's the way it's going to stay. So technically the whole thing will be stepped, but there will be sections on 1s. It really does depend on the action. So we're coming through. Do I have that leg kick out? Yeah, I think it just makes sense to. So she hits into it. And then she comes out. Now, because of the slip, does this already come back early? Or do I keep it straight for longer and then it follows through? No, I actually quite like the idea of it following through. So it feels like she's a little bit more chaotic and textured. So I want it to really feel like she goes straight and then boom, she's going to hit off to the side. I'm contemplating if I want the head to drag. Yeah, I think it will a little bit. Something like this. I think this is just not as interesting on the hand. I think this feels a bit more specific as she comes through. So I do wonder if I want to kind of like have the hand also remain contacting on the wall a little bit. So we're coming through, we're dropping down, and again, because of the texture in here, actually I'm going to put this on 1. So there's a lot of 1s through here, but part of it's to do with arc tracking and clarity. Other times it's to do with texture in this case. So I want to really feel the impact of her dropping down. And then her spine is going to hit straight in. So again, this has a lot of impact through here. And then this might be a case where we actually hyperextend the arm back for a frame. I like drag the hand into that hitting motion. So let me see if I can drag the fingers. I could probably I think I do have a specific pose for this, so I will just try and add that in. I think it's this one. Something like that. Then it hits down. I think the leg is already going to hit into position as well. So that's coming through on the leg. Trying to keep it quite tight on what the legs and the feet are doing. do want to get a bit more drag on her neck and head through here. Again, I'm kind of doing this to camera. I feel like it needs to be closer somehow. It's like the chest. I don't want to break the rig too much though. I just need to make it more flat. So she comes through, and boom, she hits down. And then we've got another in between through this. Now, I actually don't... Do I want to keep this? Maybe I can have that on the 2. I'll see what it looks like on 2s. Now, I do need to change this pose, however. So similar situation to before. I'm going to snap this into the previous pose. Make sure the rotation's also snapped. So now I have this position. And then we're going to rework the pose slightly to feel like she's then following through the action. Now, one thing that's always vital through these sections is I want to make sure that her arm has weight. So I need to make sure that we're getting that straight through her spine. And then I'm just going to counter the arm back into the correct position. So now it feels like we're over straightening the hands translations. So I can just go in here and scale this back to default. Just a little bit. Again, keeping down the line. Now with her legs, these were coming back, which is why I twisted the hips. Looks like I may need to twist a little bit more. I think I also need to twist her chest in the Y too. So again, we're slightly re-blocking some of this. I love watching others animate, trying to work on speeding up my workflow. It helps me. Oh, absolutely. It's funny you say that, because there was actually something that we used to do back when I was working in TV with still some of my closest friends now, to this day. So we're talking like, this was back maybe 8 or 9 years ago. We had this thing where we were all very passionate and wanting to like improve our skills. And one way that we did that was after hours, after we'd finished our daily work, we would basically sit down together. There'd be a group of maybe like 4 or 5 of us, and we would watch one of us animate. So we'd all sit around one of our computers and we'd just watch, like, we'd still be working on quota shots, right? So we'd actually be still being efficient and working on our stuff, even though it was after hours, which I guess is naughty in some way, but we were doing it to help ourselves, right? So as we were doing that, we would watch one of us animate, and then we'd ask them questions about their workflow, how they're thinking about posing, theory, whatever it might be, so that we could take from each other, like take information from each other and then apply it to ourselves. Which was, it's funny you say that, because it's like similar to what we're doing here in some ways, right? You're watching me animate, you get to ask questions and learn from it. But yeah, it was just funny that we were doing that way back when as well, because we all worked quite differently. Like, we all had, it's hard to describe, we all had a similar sense of maybe quality like the overall quality, I would say, was quite similar, but the way we got there was pretty different. So we were all learning from each other. Like some people had like a better sense of appeal, some people had a better sense of spacing. So yeah, it did vary quite a bit. But yeah, it was fun. I think that's also what kind of, if anyone's back in the OG days, some of you may have heard of Anim Dojo, which was basically maybe one of the first platforms to like actively live stream animation, which was being hosted by one of the guys who worked at the company that I worked for. And basically that's where we started learning how to do live streaming and animation and stuff. So I just want to reverse the scaling on some of this stuff. So let's reset the scales on these. So we're coming through. I don't want it to feel too flaily, so I'm gonna have to keep it quite tight, I think. But yeah, we'll have to see. I want it to kind of like settle a bit, so they are more straight than they are anything else. So I think that needs to be straight too. Keep the toe pointing down. There's something about the twist in the chest still. Don't know how I feel about the pose yet. I'm still contemplating how it could be better, but it's just giving me some building blocks at least. Just bring the neck up so I can tuck the head down slightly. Because her spine is straight, I don't want to go too... Yeah, I think she needs to continue tilting this way. And then just want to drag the hands a little bit more. Hey Marvin, good to see you again. You finally got to join the stream. Welcome, welcome. So we're coming through. Now, I have that structure in there as we're coming around and down. So I've got a little bit of work to put in here as well. Now, this is a case of we're dropping. I want to check my timing because I want it to feel quite low as we progress down. That's all fine. And then here we're continuing to go down, down, because here we're starting to stop. I don't want to stop for too long. So I want to check my translation Y as we're easing into this here. So as we're dropping here, I want to just ease into this stuff. Sorry, it's adverts again. So I'm going to take these keys and just want to ease into this pose here. There you go, it's a bit more progressive now. So this gives me the structure of my translation Y as we're dropping down. Had to use different countries' numbers as sidebars to fix. Oh man. Finally started animation. Oh, nice. Well, and it was thanks to all the animations that inspired me over the years. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot. That's what we're here for, right? We hype each other up. I mean, like, part of your guys' like support is also why I continue to do this project to begin with, you know? Like, knowing that people are excited for it kind of gives me the motivation I need to continue working on it too. There's part of me that wants to kind of hold that dangling pose for longer. I think it's just a fun idea to go like, and she's like holding on, but she's just loose, right? Like her arm is just holding her up the entire way. So I don't mind this pose. It needs a little bit of reworking. There's a little bit of lack of appeal and sense of motion. This one's actually pretty fun. This feels a bit more dynamic than this, right? So I'm gonna keep this one. But then all these other poses, I'm going to hold in this for now. And then we move into this. So probably all that little work that we did in blocking, we're kind of stripping back. Just to hold through here. Again, it was always part of I knew that there was going to be parts that I'd rework. We're coming around. Me get a little bit of follow through in here. And then at this point, she may start to like grip with her foot a bit more. The other one's definitely going to be more loose. So this can start to twist the hips back through. We still may get a bit of follow through, I reckon, on her chest. On the twist. Something in the translates of her head here that are a little odd. I think I've maybe gone too far. Yeah, definitely starting to break her translations. I like the idea of it. She's kind of like looking down. Then yeah, I don't actually mind the idea of the arm kind of coming back on it, coming a bit over and around. I'm just also concerned about her shoulders, that's all. But the idea of it slightly coming behind, I'm not against. There's again some weird translations and rotations in here. Why is that happening? Oh, I'm selecting two controls. There we go. So I want to get the idea that it's still dangling, that's the thing. I could have the arm just come out, right, like this. Maybe. It's a little bit more elegant. Still continue to drag the hand slightly. Needs to keep her body close to the wall. There we go. We're getting a little bit of that twist and follow through. So I'll save that. Never run into gimbal lock for the progress of the shot. That's a good question. Probably yes. More than likely. I can't remember at any specifics points, but yeah, there would definitely be some like rotation order fixes and Euler filtering, no doubt. I obviously plan ahead as much as I can, so there's probably a lot of gimbal lock I've managed to avoid. But there's also some inevitable stuff that's like, okay, because this shot is so long and there's so much rotation, right? There's only so much that you can plan for. It's going to happen at some point or another, and then you just have to use rotation orders and Euler filtering and like checking your curves and stuff to make sure that you nail that stuff out as you go through. Or in this case, because we're working in steps, it's more forgiving to fix that stuff manually, like just brute force, like do it by eye. And because it's so very snappy, this style is very forgiving for those like technical difficulties. Um, but if this was like, if I was splining this shot, then yeah, for sure, I'd end up having to probably do a bit more technical fixing. So we're coming through, we're dropping down, then here. So at this point, I definitely want to make sure I get that leg tucked in, because we are starting to slow down here. So maybe start to slow it down a little bit more progressive through there. And then I want to make sure this leg is making contact correctly. So yeah, this is where it's going to get a little tricky. So I do want to get a bit of lead in here. Make sure that leg is contacting. So I do like, maybe not the exact pose, we can always tweak it slightly. It's not perfect. It's a bit of an awkward position. Because she's going to push away later. So maybe something like this would work. Something along these lines. And then same thing here, I'm going to have to ease that in because I'm looking at the contact point. Because it's not an issue right now, but as soon as we hit these textures, you're going to notice it more. So I want to make sure that I am tracking this stuff a little bit more accurately. So this arm is starting to pull away now as we drag. And then this chest, we're actually going to begin to lean in. I'm going to be slightly reworking some of these poses. Getting the spine working. I want to lead with the head for sure. Keeping a little bit more tucked in to wrap around into this arc. Shoulder starting to break. Again, I'm fixing this stuff as I go along. It's all good. We can always get a bit of a hyperextension on the shoulder, reaching to the hand. So this is coming around. We're tracking the arc. As that drags down the line. Again, I'm not even, you see I'm just cheating it to camera. We're coming off here. So So I probably want to keep that a little bit. Again, I can cheat the translations just so that it remains contacting. Then we're coming through. So now that we've got that part working, I might try tucking this arm in, maybe? Yeah, I think so. Just creating a little bit more of an arc. So that way when we get to this pose here, this is also tucked in. We're just getting a little bit more depth. Clarity again. Can have a bit more of a fist pose in here. There we go. Wasn't blending for some reason. Tuck that in a little bit more. Coming through. Need to track the head arc a little bit more through here. I'm going to add the in-betweens in a second. I'm just tracking my arcs first through the main blocking part. Could have it still come round and in, so we get this path, which is kind of interesting. And then this. And then drop down. Tuck it in here. Then it's coming more round in this like arc that then drops down. So again, it's all part of the flow. Do we also experience Gimbal lock in blocking plus? I thought it was spline thing only. No, I mean it can happen in because when you're using blocking, I'm still using Tween Machine. So if I'm blocking correctly, depending on the transition between values, you can still get Gimbal lock. When you're using spline, it's basically just interpolating for you every frame. But even in steps, if I at any point during that transition, I'm still using Tween Machine, so it acts the same as spline does. The only difference is you're just seeing it in steps. So yes, using my workflow specifically, you can still get Gimbal lock using steps and twos, etc. if you use Tween Machine. So we're coming through, we're creating this curve in here. I want to try to create a little bit more of this wrapping round path. Yeah, that translation on that FK is kind of ugly. You'll see where I'm going with this. You can kind of start to see the arc pathing around. I can always get a cheeky lead on the toe or something to start a little bit of the underside of the foot coming through. So coming around, we're tucking in. So in here, I want to lead a bit more the knee. Get a little bit of curvature in here. Start to initiate the path. So you get a bit more of that flowing action. But now I can see these poses are starting to work together. a little bit more. So again, it looks a bit janky for a while, but that's part of starting with your spine and then working your way outwards. But I wasn't worried at any point during that where it looked broken, because I kind of I knew I could construct the rest of it after I got the spine working. Just track my silhouettes again. That shoulder I don't like. Maybe we can get that arm a little bit further out and we can like translate it. Get a little bit more of that scaling. Feeling again coming through. Just playing with force perspective a little bit. So come through, slide, then we're pushing away into this pose, which I think is working. Just need to make sure that these are straight again on the leg. Looks like they didn't get keyed. There we go. How do I prevent gimbal lock? So that's to do with thinking about what action you're creating, and what type of rotation the action is going to create. So if you're doing a forward somersault, of course your body is going to be going in rotation X, right? Because it's forwards. It's rotating. So you want to make sure that your rotation order, the first letter would be the priority in the gimbal lock. In like the rotation order is prioritizing rotation X, so that no matter how many times you go around an X, it will never gimbal. Whereas if you put the second letter, which would be in this case it's like ZX, then that means that whenever you cause X beyond 90 degrees, it's going to cause a gimbal because it's not prioritizing that letter. So the order of priority with Maya's rotation order isn't 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 3, 2. So your second letter in the rotation order is the one it prioritizes the least. So when I'm thinking about, okay, I have a forward somersault here, I'm going to make, before I even block it, I'm going to make sure my rotation order is set so that the X is first. Or if you're doing a cartwheel and it's in the Z axis, you make sure that the Z is set first. Animate does have the ability to basically look at your rotation orders, evaluate the curves, and then suggest what rotation order it's going to be best for your animation, and then it will convert it for you mid animation. But that's just, again, if you have Animate. If you try and change your rotation order without Animate midway through already animating, all your values are going to change, because what it's doing is it's re-evaluating what's priority, and then it's not going to convert the curves in your graph editor to compensate for the change. It's not going to preserve the positions that you've animated. So that's why Animate has that tool. So it preserves the position you've already animated, but changes the way that Maya computes it under the hood. But yeah, you can plan for that ahead of time if you know what rotation is going to do the most amount of change during your animation. Sorry, it's quite a long one to explain, but there are YouTube videos online where it talks about Maya's rotation order and how the Euler filter works. So yeah, I'll do some research into that. So we're coming through. We have that drag and tuck in. I have a feeling, we might be able to tuck that arm in earlier. Yeah. So we're coming around. Like this. Create a bit more of an arc on that arm. Give it a little bit more rhythm. Bring the shoulder up. Oh, got some broken shoulder there. There we go. There we go, getting a bit more rhythm going through the pose now. Spacing also looks a little bit like it needs to tuck in. Yeah, that's going to work nicely. So save that. Now I can start to add the in-betweens. So we're dropping down. Now we need to add 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm finding that I'm tending to animate on 5s through this, which is really awkward for breaking down if I want to go on 2s, because obviously it's an odd number. So there are 2 ways I can approach this. Be it I spline it and then add keys and then clean up, which I probably will do. Or I have to use Tween Machine and then it doesn't estimate it correctly. So during these transitions, what I'll most likely end up doing is hitting spline. This is where we can see if it exposes my gimbal or not. It probably is going to. I can already see some crazy spikes in that graph editor. But if I just frame through this, you know what? Not bad. So it's just through that section there. So what I could do is go into this and just basically add it on 2s. So I'm just going to insert keys. Insert key. Go again. Insert key. Another 2 frames. Insert key. Another 2 frames. Insert key. That's on 2. That's on 2. That's on 2. Okay, so it's just that part. So now I can go back into stepped. So there's only one pose out of that whole section that I've actually kind of lost, which was this one here. So what I can do, just to fix that, I can go onto this frame, for instance, and snap it back. And now we've got that pose that we made earlier. And we can just slightly tweak the timing around it. So we're coming through. Now I can start to track my arcs. The spine should kind of blend nicely anyway. We may be able to do a little bit of overshoots, etc. Do I pass through? Yeah, pass through tighter. Favor the other side, get a nice broader breakdown. Now, I can slightly offset the timing of the legs a little bit. So this can drag for a bit longer at the top. Just to get a little bit of variation. And again, I'm reworking my spacing to preserve clarity on the legs. Then this one's can pass through. So there's an ever so slight change on timing, where this one's kind of already near the end and this one's still coming through. A little bit of drag still in the leg. Then it's coming through. See that change now? So now we get that nice read of that leg hooking up into this without the other leg distracting us, which is very nice. I can create a little bit of follow through on the other side. This pose is looking kind of cool because you get this nice S shape. Just tracking the foot. Feels like we're getting a little too locked there, so I can either overshoot the leg so it comes around, overshoots maybe, then comes around, yeah, something like that. And then as for the twist and follow through on the leg here, yeah, get a nice lead on the rotations of the foot. Still they're breaking up all the little rotations. They're not all doing the same timing. Now the arm coming through. I like the idea of it having a bit more weight. So that, again, it comes through a little faster. We're going to hold up the top. Let's get a nice flat on the hand so it's reaching out. And then as it drops through, still drag the hand a little bit more for clarity. Then it's coming through. Again, just give it a little bit clearer spacing and overlap and follow through. And then here, this needs to come around. So again, tracking the arc. So we're just working it in layer by layer, just tracking each individual part. So there's a little bit more rhythm and flow to it now. Now, there's something about, I want to get a little bit more weight to her head. She drops here. And then still need to think about her lead and follow. Trying to overshoot early so that I can read her head coming up. Her neck just looks really stocky here. I think it just needs to be higher. Something like that. If I want to feel a little bit more of that weight, I can always experiment with stretching her spine as well. So that it overshoots down and kind of like holds down for a bit before it comes back up. Just a little bit of a drop on there. Just give it a little bit more weight. And then by extension, I could do the same with the arm, but we're already stretching it. I want to see how that looks in a second. It really does depend on the style. When I'm doing stuff like this, I have literally like no care for what I do to the rig, as long as it looks right in camera. But on feature films, again, if you're doing a lot of spline work, I'm a little bit more careful, because you break it too much, it'll probably just come back to you. Coming through. Yeah, okay, so that's working now regarding those in-betweens, but it is on 2 still. So I do want to see if I can add a little bit of that on 1s, just to see if I can get a little bit of that texture back. Mostly on the hand. So we're coming through. Looks like there was some weird extra key in there. Oh, it's this one. Yeah, let's get rid of that. So this isn't it. The Tusify tool I am using, but it's relative to what keys you've added. And of course, at this stage, I haven't finished adding all my keys. So it hasn't, some of this stuff isn't screen space matched, but it will be, just to be. There is part of me, you know, that I wonder if we can get away with keeping this on 2s. I think there's just so much texture. I kind of want to add a little bit more grit into this, a little bit more detail. So I think this is also too slow. But I do need to hit this beat. Which makes me wonder, do I spend more time making this slower through this transition? Which maybe means we spend a little bit more time reading the like grind on the hand and the sparks. So that this action through here is a little quicker. Because this is on 2s. So let's just put this stuff. These two are fine. We'll shift those back 2 frames. We'll also shift this back 2 frames. So I just need to retime it. We got the keys working. But I do want to make sure that I get that transition working. Yeah. So we've added this. We've got a few more frames to play with in here now. So let's try putting it on 3s. Does that give us the even spacing? It does. That works perfectly. So now instead of 2s, this section's on 3s. And then it goes back onto 2s for that transition. That works really nicely for us. That was pure coincidence of timing. Like we essentially took like 4 frames out of something and then put 4 frames into something else. It just worked out the right amount of keys. So that's fun. So we're coming through. This is on 1s. Now, I actually am going to put this... Do I put it on 1s or 2s? It's slower. So we may read the textures more. Let me put this on 2s again. So the same technique as we did before.
Your holiday with Tui.
Yeah, same technique as we used before. Go spline, and then insert back on 2s. I'm gonna have to fix some of this stuff. So gonna insert a key here. Insert a key here. That's still on 2. Insert a key there. Insert a key here. That's okay. And then this will be on a 1. Let me make that a bit faster. So we spend a little bit more time in the antic, maybe? Let's have a look. Yeah, I think we can spend a bit more time in that pose. So let's take these 2. So this can be held for a little bit longer. We can maybe ease in onto a 1 here, just for that transition, and it comes out. Something like this. So now I can delete these keys here. And then again, it's going to take a little bit of cleanup. I worry if I am moving all 3 axes at all times, would I get gimbal lock so quickly? Depends how you're moving them. So, for instance, if you're on the head control, right, and you're going to pose it, I know she's really broken, ignore the neck stretching, but imagine you rotate like this into a pose and you're like, okay, I'm happy with this position. Obviously we've got some crazy gimbal lock because we've rotated it a crazy amount of times, right? So that's going to cause gimbal lock. But if you're moving like this, as long as you're aware of how much you're rotating each of your values, then you shouldn't get gimbal lock. if you need to rotate it a lot in one axis, but you know that that's going to have a lot of value, you need to be checking your rotation order so that it also aligns with how you want to move, how you want to rotate it. If you want to be more clinical with how you rotate it, more conscious about each axis, you can just like use each one independently to get to the position you want. So if I want to turn her a bit more, I want to have her looking up, and I want to tilt her this way. Like, I've used each individual axis to control how that does, rather than just like using all three and accidentally over rotating something. I kind of use that a lot. You notice how I rotate sometimes in each of the axes independently to make sure I have more control and conscious choice. So that's maybe one way that can help you avoid over rotating by accident. But a lot of it again comes down to planning. I tend to not use free rotations too much unless I'm being more carefree like I am here. Normally I wouldn't. But like here, you can see I'm going to free rotate the arm into the position just to get it to match. When I'm doing this kind of stuff, it's definitely a lot more screen space, so I don't care as much about tracking that stuff. But normally I would do. When it's a project like this, I'm more, yeah, like I say, I'm a lot more loose. That seems to work still on 2s. A lot of it will, because it's quite slow movements. So now it just gives me a little bit more time to add the texture in. So we're coming through, we hit, we drag. And then we can follow through, hit down. Just want to get a little bit of those jittery textures in here now, which again we saw on Attack on Titan reference, but we haven't done too much of that on the actual body stuff yet. I'm trying to add a little bit more texture without going too crazy. Getting a little bit more of that erraticness, but still tracking each individual arc and how that reflects on each other. And then I think the chest is going to need to have a little bit more recoil as well, which means the arm's going to change. So I'm doing it the wrong way around, like an idiot, but that's fine. So we're coming through, we hit, then we're dropping. This is where I could... Do I use a world space? No, it's fine. So we're overshooting the chest, coming back in, just getting those little textures, and then I'm just going to reposition the hands again. And then again, naturally that's affected what the head is doing. It's naturally affected what the arms are doing. I haven't even played this back yet, that's the thing. too much jitter. Maybe something like that. Put a little bit of a bubble in there. And then I'm just tracking the arm again. It's a little bit in there. Overshooting the legs. Let's go track the clarity of the leg again. Just trying to get a little bit of the texture back in.
I make space by moving my body.
Something like that.
Feel completely unwavered by.
Sorry about the ads.
posture.
So then we're coming around. This is still on 2s. Something like this. Yeah, I can still see a little bit of texture in there, which is nice. Let me just save that. Coming through, we hit down. Now we're coming through, and then we're coming out of this. So I'm going to ease out. So this is where the scaling on the foot is going to tweak a little bit to create that path. Need to track what the foot is doing. Same with the arm. Oops. So this is going to come more in depth. So I'm cheating the arm back. Just experimenting with this to see if it's going to work. Need to track the arc in screen space. Something like that. Tracking neck, head. And I'm going to cheat the knee. Into this transition. Again, translating and breaking the knee, but just to get it where I need it to be for the path. Because the path and tracking in screen space matters more on styles like this. It's working. Now, do I go an extra 1 here? No, I don't think I do. Because this is going on to 2s through this part anyway. So here I just need to add 1 more in between. So that's on 2s. Then we're coming up. Then we're going to lead through with that leg. So this is where we're going to hit the straight. To get the nice lead on the foot. And then I want to tail the other leg behind. Again, I can use multiples later if I need to compensate for some of this spacing. It's just nice to see where we're pushing and leading from still. I feel like we'd lose that too much otherwise. So I'm tracking where the foot needs to be. And it looks like, yeah, both hands need to grab pretty quickly through here. So I'm going to have it snap into position. There's a bit more of a direct wipe, and again we can use speed lines and that kind of stuff to compensate for this spacing. Now I can actually see here, oh, there's some crazy stuff going on with that hand. I don't know why that's like that. Let me go to an old blocking. So here, let's see what the actual hand posing was. Okay, so they were both just tucked in, and I was leading out. Yeah, that makes sense. So in here, coming through, I think it was just the forearm rotations needed to be straight. Make sure we can still read it at least slightly. Something like that. Now I'm actually wondering, I know I had the arm tuck in because it was a cool action to see it tuck like this, but maybe I keep it out a little bit and then have it continue to stay out so that we're reaching forward, so that we reach contact early. I feel like we just need to do that. So then I can bring the shoulder up just to get the flow of the arms coming through a bit more. Still feels odd. Needs to be higher. Like that. And then we're coming through. Now this arm is going to stay where it was. So we get that nice stretch. And that hand is going to be reaching out to make contact here. Makes sense. Might be able to get a little bit of a stretch. I know it's a little ironic because I remember when I first started this project I was saying I wasn't going to stretch things too much, and then look what I'm doing now. I'm trying to preserve some volume. It's more just to play with foreshortening more than anything. Catching. I do want to get a reach out hand pose on her right hand here. Something like that. Keep that hand out, snappier. Feeling pretty good. Nice. So there may be a little bit of camera jittery strobing because we're not using camera space. I could try redoing Tusify to get that screen space working. But I'm worried about where I've timed my keys to turn on and off. I'll have to double check the best way to approach it. I don't think there is a tool in Tusify to like update it. Is there? Oh, update layer. Ooh. Is this what I need? If I select the layer. That's so funny. I was literally like, oh, I wish I could update it. Look at it, update layer. I wonder if that does anything. Create anim layer from selection. And then update layer. Is that what I'm looking for? So this is the... Yeah. I wonder. This is what I'm looking for. And there's an attach cam here. So through the shot, you can see where I've turned it on and off. So I guess what I could do, if I keep that, is I'll go through from the beginning, which I believe is on frame 1. Yeah. So I'm going to copy this, and then we'll delete it, and then make it a step attached to camera. And then I want to assign camera. That's the master control. Assign keys is this one, and then the camera is this. So let me reattach. It's going to run through the script. Am I going to add smears and duplicates? Yes. That will be the idea. I'll definitely be adding more distorted lines over the line work in 2D most likely. And then maybe I want to use more speed lines because it's more anime. There is some multiples I see in anime, but not lots. I'll have to look at the style again because that's really going to dictate how I approach it. But yeah, it's a good question. There definitely smears is probably not the right term I would say in this case, but I will be using definitely different forms of like 2D to create like compensation, basically, to compensate for spacing that we're doing. So in theory, that should go back to normal. Oh, it's not starting at 0. That's strange. Let me try that again. Let me remove that. Oh, maybe that... No, that is correct, right? I think that's where we started, right? Yeah, it is. So this is all correct. This is all correct. Nice. Okay, yeah, we're back to where we wanted to be. This is all off. This is all off. Off. Here. So we're going to key. Then that should go on. There we go. Now we're on 2s. This is great. That's what I wanted. This is all on. There's see how we go through. This is where I have to add it on 1s to compensate for that. Or see how we're going slightly through. So this stuff is actually okay through here. This stuff all works. And then you can turn it off here. I think maybe just for that one frame, maybe these 2. I'm just going to add it on 1s, which is fine. I can make that work. Let's scrub this in. Let me save. So we're coming through. Let's put this on 1s. So, how do I do this? The attach is going to have to go off here. So we make contact here. Let's turn it off through there. And then here, we're going to put it back on again, I think. Here. There's just that section there. There we go. That should work correctly now. And then we have the landing into this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out just to where we get to this landing part here. On this frame. And then let me just bring it back a bit. Let's do it from where she starts to drop again. Maybe around here. Yeah, we'll go from here. I'm going to close this. Let's save it. Turn off the music. And then I'll play blast. Again, I don't even know how this is going to look. But it scrubbed correctly. How I wanted it to. But how it feels is up for debate. So we're on version 49 of the Play Blast. She comes through, she jumps up. This is what we did last time. She comes around. She kicks. Retracts her arm back in. Dive. Catch. Slides back down. Knocks in. Little bit of texture in here. And then she pushes away and then lands onto this. And then this is still in blocking this last little bit here. Let me give this a run through. Nice. I think that works. What do you guys think? Does that work for you? So it's this section here from this point. This is what we did today. There's something about the hold on the arm through that part here. It feels a bit too fluid. Yeah, I think I need that to be faster. I can quickly fix that. So we're coming through. Thank you so much. So we're coming over, knocks down, that's great. This drop here feels too soft. So we're dropping. I'm going to snap this in. So we missed this in between. So we're coming through. Let's drop that a bit lower. She overshoots. And then I'm gonna have this stay down for longer. So just making it a little punchier. So this is what we were talking about before about feeling loose. This is a perfect example where it felt too loose, as I had gone in and added too much like smooth spacing. So I'm going in, I'm tightening the spacing by favoring the down for longer. Then we come up, and this means that we get more contrast. That twist in here still feels a little off to me. I think it needs to be more direct. We're coming through. Yeah, something like this. So I think I want to tuck in early. So that we get that nice progressive arc out. So then this way, the spacing kind of progresses a little bit smoother through that now. Let's try that. Just update the play blast. That arm just felt too fluid to me. How do I create these sick camera angles? I had a hard time deciding where my camera should be looking, and usually it takes a lot of work time. Yeah, so you can actually see that process on YouTube. So at the bottom of the panel, you can see it says Animate with Aaron. You check out that channel, go through the CYBERPHONK playlist, and it actually says layout, and you'll see me going through the stages of like blocking it out, and you can see where I'm saying like, okay, I'm gonna put the sphere here. I use this just a ball to start with, and I'm like, okay, now I'm looking at the composition. How can I angle this? How can I play around with focal length, all that kind of stuff, and then you'll see how I kind of come up with different angles. I feel like there's maybe too much texture on that arm now. It's very subtle, but as it comes through, I don't think it needs to come back as much. It needs to just kind of hold into it. So it comes through here. Maybe it's also the chest. There's something in here that I think needs to just be blended back a little. So we're coming through, overshooting this one. Just slightly blend it back. And I just want to check what the head is doing again. Something in here needs to be blended just a little bit. There we go. Then something about the wrist here. Feels like it's too tucked in. And then that's bending too much. It's a little bit more anatomically connected now, or like correct and less broken. I slightly unpushed it. We'll try one more time to just save that. And play blast. Okay, let's try one more time. Yeah, I think so. Right now it feels a bit weird that she's like jittering, but that's because we don't have the extra context. Because like there's gonna be, when she lands in this, there's gonna be like a bunch of like pipes that's gonna be like, and we're gonna add a little camera shake, we're gonna have a lot of sparks like spitting out of the sign. So yeah, I think adding that texture is gonna help us. So there's a little bit of loss of context right now, but it is going to make sense. later. I kind of like this is a little slower then, so we slow down and then it kicks back out again into something faster. Yeah, feels like there's a bit of force there now. As she kind of like comes off here, this action is quite quick. And I think that helps the slower movement that we have here. There's a little bit of contrast. Yeah. So I'll play it one more time, just fully, before we finish. Yeah. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. And then we'll finish off that little push off the wall and land in the next stream. And then we'll probably try and segue that into the next section, which is going to be quite techy. Probably one of the more complicated parts of the shot, like regarding rotations, that we're going to have to figure out. But yeah, that'll be a fun one to try and decipher later on. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Sorry about the technical issues earlier on in the stream, but thank you all for sticking with me and asking lots of great questions, and hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.